Charlton lose a close one to recently relegated Ipswich Town and beat Southend United to end pre-season. Just how ready are the Addicks for the upcoming Championship campaign? Hello everybody, welcome to the fourth episode of the From the Valley Pod podcast, hosted by me, Callum. Preseason is now over, thank God for that, as the Addicks prepare for the first season back in the Championship for half a decade. On this episode I want to start by doing just a tiny bit of podcast housekeeping, plans for the upcoming weeks as the season kicks off. I'd also like to discuss the preseason games away at Ipswich, or that was at Colchester, and away at Southend United. Just to be clear and transparent, I wasn't at the Ipswich game. I'll have a chat about that as well. And then finally, we'll just do a bit of a reflection on where the squad is heading into that first Championship game. And I will talk about Tracey this week. I realised last week I had a chat about Tracey leaving and then didn't get around to it. So yeah, let's get started. Let's just start with a tiny bit of podcast housekeeping. My plan at the moment is to do a preview show coming out every Thursday, and we'll do a post-match review on a Sunday. My hope is to do it live, get you guys on. You can submit some questions, submit your comments. You can hopefully get some of you guys actually on the podcast as well. I'm still getting the website sort of all finalised, so we can sort of make that process happen. And I'll keep you guys updated as we go through. But I also don't want to step on the toes of two of the other wonderful Charlton podcasts that we currently have. Obviously, Charlton Live is, I think it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and then you've got the Chronicles is normally on a Sunday evening, isn't it? So obviously with Super Sunday in the afternoon, it's a little bit tricky to find a time. I'm thinking around lunchtime. So let me know if you guys have any feedback on that. But that's my thought, is we'll do a live stream on a Sunday, sort of around lunchtime, have maybe go on for about 45 minutes to an hour, have a chat, get you guys on, chat through the game. So that's the plan at the moment. We'll see how that changes. You might start to hear a couple of ads over the next couple of episodes. I apologise for that. So if you're on Spotify, you probably get them anyway. I'm not sure if Apple Music adds them automatically, but basically with the software that I'm using, there will be some short ads. I'll make sure to keep them as far away from sort of the centre of the podcast as I can, so you don't have to take your phone out and skip through. Or if you're in the car listening, you don't have to try and fast forward through it. But I'll do the best that I can to make those as non-invasive as possible, but just kind of as a heads up. And then finally, if you guys could do me one big massive favour, if you can do any sort of likes, if you can make sure you subscribe to the podcast, that'd be fantastic. Make sure you don't miss an episode. There will be a YouTube channel that I'll get going in order to make it so that we can do the live streams, and you'll probably have to be subscribed in order to come on. But if you can make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and then if you can leave me any sort of ratings, that'd be fantastic, especially for those of you that are listening on Apple. It really helps. If you've got any friends, family, whatever are interested, please do let them know about the pod. And with that's enough sort of self-advertising for now. I feel really awkward doing that. Let's have a bit of a chat about pre-season. Alright, Charlton lose to Ipswich on Tuesday night in a game at Colchester. That was due to Ed Sheeran, I think, playing a couple of days before when the pitch wasn't ready at Portman Road, which has been a house of horrors for us for the last couple of times we've been there. And then beat Southend United on Saturday afternoon 3-0. Gaston had me with 2 goals in that game. Let's start with the Ipswich game, quite frankly, because I didn't get a chance to watch it. It's something that's actually really irritated me. Both clubs seem to have come to an agreement that they wouldn't stream it. which is very annoying when the Charlton TV pass quite clearly said you'll be able to watch all of pre-season. It's not great taste, is it? Really, it's not a great warning to let us all know that we're not going to be able to watch it until the morning of, and especially that friendly, which is on a Tuesday night away at Colchester at a ground that's actually a bit of a pain in the backside to get to from where we are, which meant that I couldn't go. I was working in the office that day and I couldn't get home and then get back out in time. All I can really go off is obviously Corley's podcast, which if you're not subscribed to his Substack, please do. He's a great guy. Information is almost always correct. Answers lots of questions. Really great pod he does with Lou Mendez. Well worth a listen. Well worth a $5 a month. If you've got the opportunity to go support Rich, please do. And then sort of off of some TV highlights, really, and some other people's sort of opinions I've seen. I won't spend more than about a minute on this. The only thing that sort of came out of it was a bit worrying is obviously Matty Godden and Luke Bray still not involved. We'll come on to them in a minute. And then also Joe Rankin-Costello seemed to come off at half-time with an injury. Beyond that, it sounded like a pretty tight game. It was which dominated the ball. That's not surprising. They're the favourites, they're the odds-on favourites to win the league, and they should be. They have maybe the best manager in the division. They've got by far the best squad in the division, I would argue. Even if they lose a Murray Hutchinson, I still think that they've got a fantastic squad. So that doesn't surprise me that they dominated the ball. I suppose our defensive shape was pretty good. Didn't sound like Kaminsky had a lot of saves to make, despite that sort of the domination of the ball. Second half, Ipswich scored a goal that wasn't quite an error. It was kind of the ball sort of slamming around a little bit. Maybe a little bit of concern that Kaminsky seems completely rooted to his line when the ball comes across, but I think that's something we just have to get used to. We got back into the game with a nice sort of reaction from Tanto Olafe, who reacts before everybody else to put the ball back in the goal, and then they scored a goal which, to be honest with you, on the replay looks miles offside, but it's hard from the angle that we had. The camera's not in line. It's possible that one of Zach or Alex Mitchell is playing him on. Not much Kaminsky can do there. Beyond my frustration with the streaming situation, it's hard for me to comment on this game, so I'm not going to spend too much time doing it. The one long ball that led to their second goal is absolute suicide in the Championship. You cannot be letting teams get through doing that, and we'll come on to some of the stuff we saw on the halfway line throughout pre-season in just a couple of moments. Okay, Southend United away. This one I was at, and it was a really strange game. The midfield seemed to be, for the whole entire first half, seemed to be a million miles away from the centre-backs. And you can sort of hear Thomas Kaminsky getting more and more frustrated as sort of the half went on about this sort of gap, because it meant that you couldn't play the ball out. And you saw sort of Lloyd Jones down there at times with a hand on his hip going, there's nowhere to go here. It seemed to be what Southend was sort of doing, was trying to mark Connor Coventry out of the game, so you didn't have that short pass. And then you're trying to play it into Doc, who technically isn't the greatest footballer in the world. He has many great qualities. His on-the-ball possession ability is not necessarily one of those. So we couldn't really get the ball out, and that was a bit problematic. I thought Sonny Carey was trying his best to sort of come deeper, but that first half, it just didn't really seem to work. The first goal that we scored, great actually, a bit of work from Tyrese Campbell to win the ball back. Ball comes across. Sonny Carey cuts inside. Actually, a nice little bit of not quite skill, but I guess we'll call it skill. Takes a shot, deflects into the goal. It was a decent move, sort of on a counter. But in possession, it was really, really poor. Down the other end, and it's a weird one, I think, probably because of the angle that I saw it, the penalty that Southend was getting wasn't a penalty. It wasn't close to a penalty. Omari Bell quite clearly gets the ball. On a side note, I think Omari Bell's been absolutely fantastic this pre-season. But it's not a penalty, right? It's not. He doesn't really touch the man at all. And, the football god's been the football god's. Good save from Thomas Kaminsky. I can't remember the last time a Charlton keeper saved a penalty. But you can see the difference in Kaminsky and Emmanuel or Maynard Brewer is his size. He's so big. He takes up so much of the goal. I mean, when you sat behind it, you can really see this. It's not a great penalty anyway, but he gets a good hand to it, stays up tall, reads the player's hip, knocks the ball away. So that was really good. So I think he made a couple of saves, Kaminsky, to sort of earn that clean sheet. And I still think it's going to be a very, very good signing. But there was a great bit in that first half when Nathan Charles decides to completely berate his side. Now, I mean, he berated them for... It's a good 2 minutes of just pure shouting. So I thought he'd take 10 seconds, have a bit of a break, calm himself down. I don't know. He went out a sip of water, came back and gave him another 2 minutes of berating them. He wasn't happy at half time. He sort of stormed down the tunnel a bit. It was kind of like, come on, Nathan, it's only pre-season. But he definitely gave him a bit of a rocket up the backside. At half time, we came out. Midfield was a lot closer to the centre backs. It just looked a little cleaner. Players were kind of finding pockets of space. Terry Campbell started to have a lot more of an impact on the game. And then he brought on Gassan. I'm happy for him. He scored 2 goals. He loves playing at Roots Hall. I don't see a future in Charlton for him. Hopefully sort of increased his value. I've just watched Stockport play Bolton, and Bolton looked absolutely toothless up front, and also they look really small. So I think maybe adding some height would make sense. And watching that, I'm very happy that we didn't re-sign Mason Burstow. But yeah, you know, potentially for Bolton, that there would be a player if they can sort out some personal terms there. But it's, you know, on a personal level, it's good to see him. I know he had some personal issues last year. Nathan sort of alluded to that in post-match press conferences. So I hope things have worked out for him. I don't think he's a player that doesn't try. I'm just not sure he's got the requisite quality to play week in and week out, and I don't think he's better than the strikers that we have, nor do we sort of play to his strengths. And so the second half, I'd say, much better. I thought Sonny Carey was really good in that second half. I thought Rob Apter looked a lot better in that second half as well, when he was able to get the ball a lot more. That worries me a little bit, especially when we pushed up in that second half. We were pressing much higher. There's a lot of space in behind Kane Ramsey there in League One, where he sort of looked as if he's playing on autopilot and was too good for the level. I worry about 2-on-1s in the Championship. You know, when you're playing against pace, which Watford definitely have in Rocco Vaca and Quadobar on the wings, and the lad whose name I can't pronounce, who's Australian, who they got from Bayern. You're going to have to be really, really, really careful in doing that. I think this game is not a particularly great one in terms of a last pre-season friendly, mainly because we're playing against a team that we're expected to dominate the ball against. In the league, there's maybe 3 or 4 games. I'm thinking Oxford, Preston potentially, Sheffield Wednesday, and maybe Hull as the 4 that you probably look at and go, yeah, we should have a lot of the ball, maybe against a Matt Robin Stoke side as well. But other than that, we're probably going to be on the wrong side of the possession stats, and so it's a bit of a strange last pre-season game. But it's good to practice against teams that you are expected to beat. I just don't know if especially for a physical challenge, but I don't know if you want that to be your final pre-season game. And so who was I impressed by? I thought Amari Bell was very good. Thought Thomas Kaminsky was good. He made a couple of other saves. A nice one off of a volley, where he kept himself big. Sonny Carey, as I say, was very good. And then, Gaston coming on scoring 2 goals. And then finally, a player that I know everyone on social media is going very, very crazy about is Ibrahim Fuller. And I absolutely understand that. I know I mentioned it before. There is a hell of a player in there. There is a real talent. He's a bit small, but Lookman was a bit small, right? And he's got this real confidence about him, but a willingness to learn. I think it's been pretty clear that all the way through that he's got a bit of swagger to him, but he's actually a really willing learner, and he loves the game, and that's really great to hear. He has a couple of very cringy TikToks and social media if you want to find them. He comes across slightly socially awkward in them, but so do I, so that's not a massive surprise. So, there's a real player in there. I think there's a real player in Mwamba as well. I thought he looked pretty good when he came on. And it's good to see them get minutes. I can understand why Nathan, it sounds like he wrapped Miles up in cotton wool. It sounds like a player like Reece Burke has been wrapped up a little bit, just to kind of keep them away. They don't need to play against Southend, right? You want to protect those that are more sort of injury prone. I think Joe Rankin-Costello's had some injuries throughout his career as well. So, again, and he sort of hurt himself on Tuesday. So you're just trying to kind of keep players fit. And they don't need to play against National League opposition. The only sort of worry maybe coming out was Lloyd Jones coming off. The way Nathan was talking after the game, it didn't sound like there was a huge problem there. It's probably just precautionary. But that is going to be a concern all season, isn't it? Is Lloyd Jones going down in pain? And how we sort of deal with that, especially if we end up with two left footers at the back. Can you play Alex Mitchell in there, which is who he brought on? Maybe. I still think Alex Mitchell against Championship pressers is asking for trouble, really. But we will see what the club decides to do. And then just on the two try lists, I don't think Lakambisa is good enough. I don't find him particularly impressive. He doesn't cross the ball very well. He's got a decent first touch on him, and he's quite quick. But I don't see that necessarily as a great option moving forward. Although Joe Bennett, I don't mind. A short-term cover, maybe 6-month contract, then maybe have a look at the left wing-back position again in January. He's older, but he doesn't seem to be that slow, and he's got a nice cross on him, and also he's got a fantastic beard. So I'm not trying to play with the sort of beard I wish I could grow. But no, I don't mind the idea of Joe Bennett. I wouldn't sign Lakambisa, although I think a lot of this depends on whether they can get the Fukuada out of Japan. I think by all intents and purposes, they will go for him on a free. If I think is it Urawa Red Diamonds don't sell him. It's one of the larger sides in the Japanese league. All right, let's have a look at the squad, and then we'll have a chat about the Harvey Knibbs transfer saga from hell and Tracey leaving. All right, 6 days before the start of the season, where does the squad stand? And we'll get into this on Thursday's pod, maybe a little bit more in depth. Goalkeeper is sorted. Thomas Kaminski is the number one. The only real question, I think, across the back five is going to be whether it's Amari Bell and Macaulay Gillespie that starts. Coming into pre-season, I would have thought Gillespie would have been given the nod, but I think Bell's been so good in pre-season and also gives you some recovery pace. It wouldn't surprise me if Bell ultimately ends up winning that battle. The two fullbacks are sorted. You've got obviously Josh Edwards on the left, and then Rob Apter will be sort of a hybrid right winger, right wing back on the other side. Kane Ramsey and Lloyd Jones obviously fill the other two centre back slots. Connor Coventry picks himself in the middle of midfield. Whenever he hasn't played this pre-season, we've missed him terribly. That's a real worry for me going into the season, but again, we can talk about that another time. And then you've got a question of, will it be JRC, will it be Greg Docherty? I think it will be Docherty on Saturday, club captain, first game. Can't imagine it won't be. And then the 10, I think it's going to end up being Sonny Carey. Ultimately, it will be Harvey Knibbs, I would imagine. But for Saturday, I think you're looking at Carey, who's played every game in pre-season and actually done pretty well. And then it's the upfront bit that none of us know. Who's fit, who's not fit, who's able to play, who's going to start. I think the obvious thing is that Matty Godden, it sounds like, will be out for a little bit longer, and that Luke Berry's back in training. I think those are the two bits we got from Nathan's very short post-match interviews. That's harsh on Godden after a great season. It sounds like he tried to come back and then sort of re-aggravated it. I don't know if we'll see Harvey Knibbs before the international break, beyond maybe a substitute appearance or two. He can't have much match fitness. He hasn't played at all in pre-season. And no, towards the end of the season with Reading, he was struggling with an injury. So that's one that we don't know about either. Miles Leeburn, was Nathan being entirely truthful when he said it was just minutes? Or has he picked himself up a knock? We don't know. Tanto Oluwafe not getting any minutes against Southend was very interesting. Again, it may just be let's wrap him up in cotton wool. We'll give Gassan a run around. He hasn't had one all pre-season. And so it could kind of be any of these strikers. Charlie Kelman's done 15 minutes, I think it was 20 minutes against Ipswich, then did 45 against Southend. I'd imagine that means he can do an hour against Watford, so he'll start. Tyrese Campbell, I think, is probably nailed on to start. So you're probably looking at Kelman and TC up front, but I don't know if that worked in that first half. It's a really interesting conundrum for Nathan. They have given him so much firepower up front, but he's the one that's going to have to make it work. We only have one big striker, if you don't include Gassan in Miles, and he's actually more of a technical one. So we can't just play long balls all game, because we don't really have anyone to knock it down. So it's going to be interesting who he starts. I think the only worry is you're missing, 7 or 8 bodies, weren't we, on Saturday? How ready are some players to play those first games of the Championship is so demanding. I think, and this is going to come back to bite me, isn't it? But I think we're probably quite lucky in terms of the start being against a Watford side who have a new manager and are trying to get themselves into position to do well this season. They're still learning their new system, so that probably helps us out a little bit. But really, at the beginning of the season, it's just how many points can we pick up, right? A lot of these home games are going to have quite a few people there. I'd imagine we're looking at 22,000 on Saturday. There'll be a lot around. We'll get into it later. I want to just have a quick conversation about restricted sale and the stupidity of what's going on with that. But, we're looking at 22,000 people, probably at the Valley on Saturday. And so really getting in front of those people, really making a good start, a good impression, so we can keep sort of bums in seats as we move forward. But it's all about getting a good start, getting good results, just making sure that we're in a place where when we have some sort of lulls, and we will, right? You look at Portsmouth, Oxford, and who was the other side that went up? Why is it escaping me? I don't know why it's escaping me. It will come back to me in a minute. But, all 3 sides that went up the season before last, they had those moments where they weren't particularly playing well, sort of dropping points as they went. Teams like Stoke that even survived, they had a really bad period. So you can survive a really bad patch, but what we want to do is make sure we get off to good starts. We give ourselves a little bit of little room to manoeuvre, give ourselves a bit of a cushion heading into some of those really difficult months that we have. Really, you look at some of October and November, you look at December, there's some really difficult fixtures in there, and some more bogey sides as well. So, look, there's not going to be an easy week in the Championship. There's going to be injuries, I'm sure, all the way through. It's going to be a slog at times, but I'm really excited to see how we go. Let me know if you guys agree with my sort of predicted XL. I think it will be Kelman and TC up front. So I think you're looking at Kaminski, Edwards, Bell, Jones, Ramsey, Apter, Coventry, Dock, Kerry, Kelman, and Tyrese Campbell. Let me know what you guys think. I'll do like a proper predicted XL and squad on Thursday's pod. But my hope is that we're ready. I think the fans are ready. Let's hope the players are as we embark on our first season back in the Championship in 5 years. Let's just do a couple of minutes on the Harvey Knibbs transfer saga from hell last week. I don't think any of us know what happens. I think it's a pretty easy guess that Reading came back for more money right at the last minute. We sort of discussed Knibbs in depth, but we sort of woke up early in the week and basically Corley confirmed we were going after Harvey Knibbs. And normally when Corley says we're going after someone, that's normally is pretty close to happening. We knew the player wanted to make the move. We knew that Reading had left him out of a preseason game on the weekend, so that because they thought he was going to go. And then we got to, was it Wednesday? Wednesday or Thursday. Woke up and all of a sudden it all collapsed, and it was very strange to me. It sounded like a failed medical. I think I saw some of my comments on social media. It seemed that I thought he'd failed medical. I know he'd had a bit of knee issues. He played a lot of games, but he had some knee issues towards the end of his time at Reading, and he was playing through pain. And then it sort of the Reading manager came out again and it sort of gave almost like a running commentary for 24 hours, Reading, on what was going on. I think their CEO was involved. It was very, very strange. Their owner had liked to tweet earlier in the week saying that Knibbs was going to Charlton, and then it all sort of fell apart, and it was really, really strange. No one had any idea what was going on. All of a sudden, Charlton put a thing out saying at 6 o'clock we're going to announce a player, and then Reading went early, and somehow they'd posted to their website that he was going, then they quickly took that down, so we all know what it was. Charlton went through and continued their story, with multiple posts, sort of trying to keep it hidden. It's quite clear from the weather that video had been shot earlier in the week, which meant that a lot of the sort of in the know guys that were getting the mickey taken out of them, and some of the people that I know who are very, very accurate, had said it was done. And all of a sudden it wasn't. The number of people who know what's happening who went, I have no idea what's happened here. The only person who seems to maybe have gotten it right is that Peter O, isn't it? The journalist who said it would be done by the end of the week. And I don't think he put anything out about it collapsing, but it's just weird. A weird transfer situation, and I thought it was pretty unprofessional from Reading. Normally you don't comment on other people on things like that, saying that Harvey's mental health was, mental health, his mental sort of state wasn't, may have not been fantastic, because just very weird, not particularly professional. I wonder if they've tried to go to him last minute to sign a contract, and he said no, and who knows. But just a really, really weird saga, and a reminder to all of us how important the world of communications is. All right. Last segment, we'll just have a quick chat about Tracey leaving, and we'll have a conversation about restricted sale for Watford here on the From the Valley Floyd podcast. All right, last week on the pod I said I'd chat about the news that we heard that Tracey Lieben had decided to leave the club following 10 years of fantastic service. And then I forgot to, once I got to the end. I wanted to do that at the end because Tracey is been such a fantastic servant to the football club. Whether you believe the stories or not about what she said to Neville Southall, she has been at the club through and through and through. She is Mrs. Charlton in so many ways. If you get a chance to chat to her, she's a lovely, lovely woman. Giving people training ground access, enable people whose families have been ill to meet players and do different things. Obviously, the fantastic work she's done with the PSA testing, which has saved so many lives, or put people's minds at ease. Just truly a wonderful servant, and a really, really nice person, and we've been very lucky to have her. It sounded like from the chairman, from the comments from Gavin Carter, the chairman, it sounded like this was the decision that she'd made, and that they're really disappointed that she's gone. We've all heard the stories of players staying at hers, or her helping players cook, or giving them simple recipe cards, or taking them shopping, or whatever it may or may not be. Just a truly wonderful servant, and I think it's so nice that she gets to go out after a promotion to the Championship, and also after a summer where they've worked very hard with the brand new signings that have come in. So I just wanted to really pay tribute to Tracey and the work that she's done. And then finally, I just want to chat about the restricted sale for Watford, because I think it's pretty... I understand the premise of it, and I understand that it's a league-wide thing. I don't think this is necessarily a Charlton thing. That when the away end sells out, you basically make everything on restricted sale. That's great. except for when you're in August, when there are tourists around and there are people that are quite clearly saying, I'd like to go to these games. I clearly don't live in Hertfordshire. They're coming from places like the United States, places like Canada, and they're unable to buy tickets 8-9 weeks before. Maybe they haven't finalised their plans. They don't know if they're going to be around. And I just think that it's a silly system to say that, hey, the away end sold out only if you ever bought before. I was interested in going to Luton against Wimbledon actually last week, and that went to restricted sale. And obviously, I've never bought a Luton ticket in my life. It doesn't mean I'm a Wimbledon fan. I'm not. I'm doing a Charlton podcast. So I think like a lot of regulations, some of them are brought in, sort of on hooliganism back in the 80s and 90s. And I know the authorities, some of them are thinking about loosening certain aspects, and some maybe have slightly backfired, but this I think it's a slightly ridiculous position to take, that we're going to have a bunch of Watford fans on the home end that way. I know there was an issue with Ipswich, and I think that's probably where they've changed it, where there were 3 or 4 idiots in the home end. But there has to be a better way to allow people to come to games who haven't. We're trying to fill the ground. The only way to fill the ground is to allow tourists to come. We live in a city that's heavily touristed, right? People should be able to go to games. It shouldn't be a thing where we're locking them out. One of the reasons why I really don't like attending Serie A games, right? For example, I go to games in Spain or Portugal or France, or I've been in Germany, and they're easy to go to. There's no checks, there's no nothing. You go to a game in Italy, you got to bring your passport, and you're in cities that aren't always the safest, and you're having to carry a passport around with you, and it bothers you, and it makes it far less enjoyable. So I do think that some of the restrictions that are placed on football fans at the moment are over the top, and really, I think that we should be looking at ways to loosen those regulations rather than tighten them. Just before we go, I didn't want to put any music towards this. I didn't think it'd be appropriate. I just want to pass my condolences on, obviously, to the family of Ethan Odewale, who passed away last week at the far too young age of 10 years old. There really aren't any words that I can use, that any of us can use. A life taken far too short, far too early. You can see the smile in the image. All I can do is send my condolences to his family, his teammates in the academy, and to say that he will be really missed forever an Addick. Just the worst thing that you can possibly hear from the football club, and it puts into context one of the great quotes that football is the most important of the least important things, and in this week football really was not the most important thing. Rest in peace, Ethan.